After selling 4.96 million copies and receiving widespread critical acclaim for Resident Evil 2, one complaint stuck out. This was nice and all, but it was kind of the same old gameplay. Capcom then decided, well, it was time to innovate. But it would take a while, so they started work on a game to revolutionize the franchise to be on the upcoming PlayStation 2, a sequel for the Dreamcast and a spin-off game for the PlayStation. The real question would be, which game would be given the title of the third Resident Evil game?
Resident Evil.
Now that Resident Evil has proven itself not to be a fad, Capcom decided to expand its production of the games. But it wasn't the only company to take notice. Other game companies started to make games inspired by Resident Evil, and so did Capcom themselves. Seeing that there was some more space in the whole survivor horror genre, Shinji Mikami decided to make Dino Crisis, a game called by many critics to be Resident Evil with dinosaurs, a formula that proved to be pretty successful. Kamiya and the core Resident Evil team went on to work on Resident Evil 4 on the new PS2, which would fundamentally change the franchise if it actually became a Resident Evil game. And here's where my research becomes a little bit muddy. So here's what I do know. Capcom wanted the main numbered Resident Evil games to be on the PlayStation. They also wanted to make a game that took more power. So what was stated to be the true sequel to Resident Evil 2 was made for the Sega Dreamcast. The thing that really confused me is why Capcom was insistent on keeping the main series on the PlayStation. From the numbers, it was really clear that Resident Evil sold PlayStations, so it's very likely that they had a contract. But the only official word that I've seen is from the statement from a Electronic Games Monthly magazine that pretty much just stated the same thing that I just said. Anyways, it's clear that Resident Evil 3 was supposed to be a side story meant to supplement the story of Resident Evil 2. The original plan, according to writer Yasuhisa Kawamura, was that the game would be on a luxury cruise liner with Hunk trying to get that virus back to Umbrella. But that idea would prove to be too ambitious. They needed to go back to an old concept, Raccoon City. Setting RE2 in Raccoon City meant that they had to do less work as they reused a lot of assets and even some characters for this one. See, the thing is that the game wasn't even supposed to reuse Jill Valentine, which really doesn't really make sense that Jill Valentine was running around Raccoon City at the same time that Leon and Claire were. See, the thing is that the game wasn't even supposed to reuse Jill Valentine, which kinda really doesn't make sense in the context of the game why they actually did. Why she was running around Raccoon City around the same time as Leon and Jill, mainly cause this note said that Stars was overseas and okay, I'll stop. But the point is that Jill wasn't even supposed to be in this game, but actually a brand new character. See, Capcom thought it would be easier for the game to be marketed if Jill was the main character and Raccoon City would be destroyed, like Spencer Mansion. And with those specifications, Resident Evil 3 was released as the most mechanically different Resident Evil game so far. So even when Capcom couldn't progress by making the technology better, they doubled down, adding several mechanics, so much so that they actually made instruction booklets, actual items in your inventory, to make sure that you actually read them. But with that, they actually really had to compromise on the presentation. There's this motion comic thing where Jill vaguely talks about how the city got taken over by Umbrella. Then there's this action-packed pre-rendered cutscene that plays that shows how the police force got destroyed by zombies. Seemed that could have been in the last game. Probably wasn't though, because it shows the new Umbrella mercenary force. All of a sudden, Jill is doing a flip in midair, jumping through an exploding door. The previous openings all pretty much set up a mystery, the characters and how those characters got there. This game just starts. It just doesn't really give you a lot of that explanation. But anyways, you pretty much just have to run down this alleyway here and I said dodge. And you get into this room where you meet this guy who gets really scared, locks himself into a storage container saying,
"I'd rather starve to death in here than be eaten by one of those undead monsters!"
And the game sets up its main motif. I'd say motif instead of theme mainly because I find it really hard to draw a universal truth. Mainly the game has these vignettes of heroism, how different people rise up in a situation of due stress. So this is first shown off with the first guy, then with Brad Vickers, the cowardly pilot from the first game, who was running around the city scared. There's people you hear scream and you try to find them, but by the time you get there, they're normally dead. Most evidently, the supporting character in this game, Carlos. At the beginning, he's not this very heroic guy, but then he kind of grows to be a more heroic dude. The plot mainly revolves around Jill and her figuring out more about this umbrella mercenary group. The plot is okay. It doesn't really grab you like the last one with a genuine mystery of intertwining people, or even iconic like the first one. There is this one great scene towards the beginning that is genuinely terrifying with Brad and the new, pretty scary nemesis creature.
Jill! Brad! We've gotta... Jill! Help! No!
This game retread that idea from RE2 of Trenchy, but now in certain scripted sequences, you're given an explicit choice of what you want to do. This also reinforces the whole idea of heroism. One choice is normally a more direct way of dealing with Nemesis, the other running away. Gameplay revolves around the normal gathering items, moving from room to room, solving puzzles, and dealing with enemies along the way. The thing is that the game has more curveballs than you'd expect. This is the first Resident Evil game where there's only one campaign. You play as Jill Valentine in this one. The map design feels a lot more simpler, but the remarkable thing is that in previous games, you were mainly indoors. This game revolves around you running around Raccoon City outside. Remember how I complained about the puzzles in previous games? Well, these puzzles are a bit more complicated, are genuinely more interesting to figure out than the move the box on the switch puzzles of previous games. These changes carry over into general combat and item management. There are now items in the environment that you could shoot and it does stuff. Typically explode. The real problem with this system is timing it properly, as you feel like you should be hitting something, but the game says you're shooting a zombie. It's really frustrating to not have that much control of where you're shooting. There's also a dodge move that can be used to avoid monster grabs. It really makes dealing with hunters and other quick moving enemies a lot less frustrating. This and a quick turn move tries to alleviate those people who don't really like the more restrictive tank controls. Also, there is a bullet crafting system for people who don't like conserving ammo. I wasn't really hurting for bullets without the system. I only used it for the final boss fight just to have extra ammo that I really didn't even use. Weapon management seems to be less of a thing. I didn't even use any of the more exotic weapons at all, and ended the game with a whole lot of grenade launcher bullets. A little observation that I had is that this is the first RE game that doesn't really end off with you shooting a rocket launcher at the last boss. RE3 is another addition to the whole heightening of the action of the franchise, giving you a whole lot of ammo, new moves to help defend against the bad guys, and having an old, familiar character kind of makes the game less scary. It's also a lot easier. To me, at least. There are some great jump scares in here, but it's kind of getting old. The formula is, at least. It's still pretty scary and a pretty decent game. Worth playing if you want more Resident Evil. Sales for RE3 wasn't as good as the series high of RE2. To this day, RE2 is still the 4th best-selling Capcom game, while RE3 is the 11th. Still a respectable amount of sales. It's pretty possible that people were kind of getting tired of the old RE formula, kind of hungering for what would become known as RE4, but it's something that people wouldn't see for 6 years. But in between, there would be a whole bunch of spin-off games. First of which is RE Survivor, a light gun game that allegedly got its light gun compatibility cut in America due to Columbine. Or at least that is according to non-cited wikis and this one really weird book. What the media failed to mention instead of the people killed, but the actual gamers who couldn't play their bad video game with a stupid plastic gun. Anyways, RE Survivor is the RE game from the first person's perspective, but it really doesn't really work that well. Fast-moving enemies are hard to hit, well, harder than they should be, and sometimes AI seems buggier than any of the other Resident Evil games. The game has a lot of scary enemies from Resident Evil 1 and 2, and it just doesn't really do them justice. They just throw them willy-nilly at you. Well, except for these umbrella monkey guys, are really unnerving because they're long arms, but it's really unfair towards the end where they actually gang up on you and kind of can stun lock you. They're apparently referred to as trash sweepers, which really ain't accurate because this game isn't really trash, it's actually just straight up garbage. Even some of the mystery in this game is just really, really bad. It just really fails to do anything interesting and causes because the whole thing is about this amnesiac person who's trying to figure out who they are. He then thinks that he's this like murderous guy named Vincent, which it's really obvious that he's not. Yeah, Capcom, I guess the description, the truth of astonishment would soon become as obvious was, well, too obvious. The acting is laughably bad. Not the kind of laughable like the original RE that had this cheese and charm because of the actual writing was just awkward. This game is just straight up terrible in every single way. And critics responded accordingly. What one critic actually even said that the game turned what might have been a souffle into a hobo pie, whatever that means. The game didn't really sell as well as other Resident Evil games, but it obviously wasn't really meant to. It got 2 sequels. 2! Really? Yeah. It barely got the development that it deserved as it was the first game to be developed by the third-party developer Tose and not Capcom themselves. I don't know why someone would play a game like this today. It's not a good light gun game. I guess you could laugh at it, or better yet, just watch Cat Icarus's video on it. Huh. He only played 1 hour of it. Wait. I guess I was able to beat the game. Ha ha ha. Oh, wait. That's probably not a good thing, I guess.